Hello, thank you for tuning in to read some more with me. Today we are going to be reading a really great poem. While we're reading this poem, I want you to be thinking about a couple of different elements of poetry. I want you thinking, are you hearing rhyming words? Normally in poems, rhyming words happen at the ends of certain lines. So I want to see if you can be listening for that. I also want you to think, are you hearing a rhythm in this poem? Rhythm's a word that's kind of like a beat. Do you hear that the poem needs to be read a certain way? Okay? The last thing I want you paying attention for. So we talked about rhyme, we talked about rhythm. I also want you to think, are you able to kind of think about what this poem is trying to tell us? Normally poets don't just come out and say, I'm telling you about birds, or I'm telling you about houses. Instead, they normally go about it in a more creative way where you have to figure out what they're meaning. They use figurative language, so they use a lot of adjectives, they describe things, they compare things to other things, and you have to kind of play detective and figure out what are they really talking about. It's very different than nonfiction writing, where you can read and you can just be informed on something. With poetry, you really have to interpret and try and figure out what they're saying. So, while I'm reading this poem, you are thinking of rhyme. Are the words rhyming? Rhythm. Is there a beat that I'm kind of have to read this poem through? How could I describe the rhythm? Last thing, what is this poem trying to tell me? How is the poet using creative language to help me to figure this out? We are going to be reading a poem by Robert Louis Stevenson. He's one of my favorite poets. He writes some really good stuff. And we're going to be reading a poem called Block City. There's a little picture of the boy here playing with blocks. The title of the poem's giving us a hint, Block City. What are you able to build with your blocks? Castles and palaces, temples and docks? Rain may keep raining and others go roam, but I can be happy and building at home. Okay, so that was just the first stanza, the first part. Did you hear rhyming? Was there kind of a rhythm? Did I read it in a certain way? I didn't go, what are you able to build with your blocks, castles and palaces, temples and docks? Rain may keep raining. No. Instead, I did different pauses. I stressed certain syllables. And what do you think this was trying to tell us? What are you able to build with your blocks? Castles and palaces, temples and docks. Rain may keep raining and others go roam, but I can be happy and building at home. All right, I'm going to keep going. Let the sofa be mountains, the carpet be sea. There I'll establish a city for me. A kirk and a mill and a palace beside, and a harbor as well where my vessels may ride. Do you think he's talking about a real city? Or do you think this poet's trying to show us that he's doing something different? Remember the title, Block City. Great is the palace with pillar and wall, a sort of a tower on top of it all, and steps coming down in an orderly way to where my toy vessels lie safe in the bay. This one is sailing and that one is moored, which means it's kind of like parked, it's not moving. Hark to the song of the sailors on board, and see on the steps of my palace the kings, coming and going with presents and things. Now I have done it, down let it go, all in a moment the town is laid low, block upon block lying scattered and free. What is there left of my town by the sea? Yet as I saw it, I see it again, the kirk and the palace, the ships and the men. And as long as I live and wherever I be, I'll always remember my town by the sea. Wow, I really like that poem. It kind of got me to imagine things in a different way. I saw the picture of the little boy at the beginning building with blocks. The town that we were reading about, I want you to think, was it a real town? Do you think the poet was trying to teach us something different? What happened to the town? You did a really great job listening to that poem, thinking about the rhyming words, thinking about the rhythm that you're hearing, and also trying to think, what is this poem talking about? Maybe you could try and listen to this poem again and pause it and point out some rhyming words to the person you're reading with. Maybe you could describe what the rhythm is like for this poem. And maybe you could jot down a couple of sentences explaining what is happening in this poem. What is the author actually saying? All right, thank you for tuning in. I'm glad that we got to read this poem together. Have a great day. Bye-bye.